What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Overly Deej. Hope y'all having a blessed day. So we're gonna do something a little different. You know what I'm saying? So I'm finally back on YouTube. I know it's been a long time. I've really been prioritizing and kind of building my content and platform more so on TikTok. So I haven't been on here on YouTube in a while, but I feel like it's time for the final mock draft. Man, it's officially here. Um, been working on this a lot. Shout out Nico Elite Takes because I just finished watching kind of his mock draft and love kind of similar mindset and stuff. And Nico got that rep, got that status. You feel me? But um, regardless of how many views and stuff this gets, I'm just on here, sports content creator. Just love talking ball. This is what I love to do. It's what makes me happy. So I'm gonna do that. This is a mock draft, something that I've been planning for a long time, and now it's finally complete. The final mock draft is done. I teased it on my Instagram, so if you follow me, overly Deej _23. Also, again, go to my TikTok at overly Deej / overly sports, where you can find me posting nearly daily content on sports stuff. All right, so here we have the final mock draft with trades. So at number one overall, right, and this is obviously as widely expected and what obviously I believe will happen and what the entire NFL landscape will happen, or believe what will happen is that the Raiders at number one will pick Fernando Mendoza, and that is the pick here at number one overall. Listen, we haven't really talked about Fernando Mendoza a lot, specifically on my TikTok and stuff like that. But again, ideal comp, in my opinion, is Matt Ryan, which is his physical ability, that clutch ability that he showed late down the stretch games like Penn State, Ohio State, Miami, the toughness, taking hits, and still being able to deliver the ball down the field. I think it again, just with what the Raiders have done, I think he's in a great spot. Mentorship under Kirk Cousins. You don't have to force him in, bring him in, you know what I'm saying, for him to start day one and throw him into the fire. He can sit for a little bit for the first like 2 to 3 weeks of the season. And once he's fully ready, the Fernando Mendoza era officially begins. The fan base will embrace him. They'll love him. The Raiders get their franchise quarterback, their true franchise quarterback guy they haven't had since Derek Carr left. And you have Tom Brady, who can also, that's great, you know what I'm saying, for him to walk into the building. You've got Ashton Genty, you got Brock Bowers, they brought in Tyler Linderbaum, you signed Jalen Naylor, and you can use those other picks to build out your team. I think Fernando Mendoza is in a very great spot to succeed right away. Number two overall, I have the New York Jets selecting Arvell Reese, linebacker out of Ohio State. There's been kind of debate. Will it be Arvell Reese? Will it be David Bailey? I think if you're the New York Jets, I think you go with the higher upside and the versatility, and you take Arvell Reese. Listen, this is a very talented linebacker. He was an All-American last year. This is a guy that had 60-plus tackles, 10 tackles for loss. He had 6.5 sacks, and he primarily played off the ball, but he showed his ability to go and play on the ball, and he was absolutely dynamic as a pass rusher. And you did see the production in the pass production kind of dip because he played more. They started playing him more off the ball. But that's the thing. I think his ceiling as a pass rusher is very high. And I just think, again, like when you're looking at the Jets, when you look at the moves they've made, they signed Joseph Osai. You have Will McDonald. You've got Aaron Glenn. They obviously have that, they're in well positioned where you can, again, you start Arvell Reese on the ball, but then obviously if it doesn't work on the ball, you can put him off the ball. And I still think he'll be good at either or, but I think he has the ceiling similar to Michael Parsons to really project and be a really good pass rusher in this league if given the opportunity and he gets the good coaching, something that he did mention that is there. Also, the Jets did cancel their meeting with David Bailey, which gives me kind of the indication that, yeah, they like Arvell Reese a lot more. Just got another notification from Todd McShay, and according to Bleacher Report, is that they are widely expected, and the safer option is that they will take Arvell Reese at number two overall. I've got a trade, a big time trade. The Dallas Cowboys, they're going to move up. There's been some rumors, obviously, that the Cowboys are going to get aggressive and move up. I have them trading up with the Arizona Cardinals at number three. The Cardinals, again, they're not in position to really draft their quarterback. It doesn't make sense to take Ty Simpson this high at number three overall. I think that'd be just a little bit of overvalue, but stay tuned because I have them moving back. I have the Cowboys moving up from 12 to 3. And I have them moving that 20th overall pick. Maybe they find a way and maneuver to keep that pick and just send other draft capital like a second and future draft capital in the future. I have the 20th overall pick this year plus a third round pick going to the Arizona Cardinals for them to move up. And with the third overall pick, The Dallas Cowboys take Sonny Styles. Listen, if you know the Cowboys and their biggest need, their biggest area of aggression, they have to address their defense. Their defense had really underperformed, underachieved. Specifically last year, they were probably the worst defense in the league last year. They were terrible last year. They need to get a playmaker. They've tried kind of, their experiments with off-the-ball linebackers, right? They tried with Logan Wilson. That didn't quite work out. Kenneth Walker, that didn't quite work out. They have young players like Demarion Overshown, who's shown a lot of promise, has played well for them, but his biggest thing has been staying on the field. Sonny Styles, with his athletic profile, his projection, but also the production, just the complete football player that he has on top of how athletic he is, I think it makes a ton of sense for them to go up and get a guy who, in my opinion, could be a perennial All-Pro, and I think has the highest ceiling of any player defensively in this draft. Ideal comp is Fred Warner. I think it just makes so much sense for the Dallas Cowboys to get aggressive, go get Sonny Styles. Would be great if they're able to move up and still keep that 20th overall pick, but I think, again, when you've seen Dallas and their moves as of late, they move. They traded a first-round pick to go get Quinnen Williams. They traded picks to go get Logan Wilson. Like, they've been aggressive and moving up, and they've been able to land good defensive talent. And I think, again, for a defense that's lackluster, they also traded and got Rashawn Gary and traded a third-round pick to get him. Like, they've been aggressive in trying to add to this defense with the draft capital that they accumulated from the Michael Parsons trade. So I think this would be a phenomenal trade-up and an aggressive move that I'd love for Dallas. And Sonny Styles will be a hell of a pick at number 3. At number 4, I have the Tennessee Titans. They've really kind of, for me, they've been all over the place. Like, what will they do at number 4? I think this will kind of really set the tone of really the NFL draft. What will the Titans do at 4? I've had Jeremiah Love here. I've had Sonny Styles. If he were to fall to them, go here as well. Could potentially they go, and realistically, in my opinion, what they should do is really pursue Carnell Tate and really take the wide receiver at 4. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think they're going to do that. I think if David Bailey, then obviously if the Jets don't take him at 2, and ideally kind of those teams are connected with Robert Saleh, right? Robert Saleh, the former Jets head coach, and how he built kind of that defense with the Jets. Now he had Jermaine Johnson and those guys, right? And number 4, I think if David Bailey is there, I think at the premium position, look, if you look at the Titans, and again, it makes a lot of sense for them to take wide receiver because you're trying to build around Cam Ward. But if you look at the offseason, what they did, other than just adding Wan'Dale Robinson, they've made an emphasis on building their defense, signing Alontae Saylor, signing Cordell Flott, bringing in guys like John Franklin Myers, and making the trade to swap, T'Vondre Sweat for Jermaine Johnson, bringing in Jermaine Johnson. You now complete your defensive line around Jeffrey Simmons, and you get David Bailey to rush off the edge. And again, with Jermaine Johnson, and kind of he hasn't been the same player since his Achilles injury, you want to get, for sure, fire edge rusher in David Bailey. Now, David Bailey, he's not a terrible run defender, but he's not the best run defender. It's something that he can improve and get better at. I think adding more strength. And also, too, he has the upside to add more power to his moves, but he's the most productive pass rusher in this draft. It's just, will he be able to hold up against the run, specifically being more of a speed finesse pass rusher? But I think it makes a lot of sense. And again, he's in Robert Saleh's scheme. Players like that in that scheme, I think he's in a great spot to flourish. I think it makes a ton of sense for the Titans to stay at 4 and take David Bailey if he's there on the board for them. At number 5, the New York Giants. Now, obviously, as you see, they made that trade to get that number 10 overall pick, trading Dexter Lawrence, their star defensive tackle, away to the Cincinnati Bengals. So they now have 2 top 10 picks, a top 5 pick, and they got the 10th overall pick. And I think, again, I've kind of been all over the place with them. Do they go linebacker, Sonny Styles, if he falls on the board? Do they take Jeremiah Love? I'm hearing the consensus rumor is that they love Jeremiah Love, but they also love, Caleb Downs. And I think, again, the consensus really is that they're going to take one of the Ohio State players at number 5 if he's there. And again, with Jeremiah Love, it does make a lot of sense. And I told my boy this. I was like, I remember when the Jaguars were picking number 4 in 2017, I wanted us to take the defensive player and Jonathan Allen, but we ended up taking Leonard Fournette. And while Leonard Fournette, in that year, we ended up going to the AFC Championship game. Now, again, Leonard Fournette, it was kind of up and down, didn't quite pan out how we wanted it to with him, didn't really last long in Jacksonville, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's kind of that ceiling of adding a special player, and I'm all about trying to build around Jackson Dart. But I think if you're the Giants, you just traded, again, your star defensive tackle away. You were one of the worst run defense teams in the league last year. And if you know John Harbaugh and his philosophy, he's always had a transcendent safety, in his system, whether that's Ed Reed, Kyle Hamilton, Now you add Caleb Downs. I think he'd be a great fit. Giants fans want this. I think every Giants fan who is their number one player on their board, they want Caleb Downs, and I'm gonna give them to y'all here. Caleb Downs goes number 5 to the New York Giants, and I think it just makes a ton of sense. You go offense with your first pick, and then with your next pick, you go, or defense with your first pick, and then you go offense with that next pick. Number 6, I have another big trade. I have the Browns moving back. I've heard the rumor that they want to move back and try to accumulate some more draft picks. So I have the New York Jets moving up from 16. And remember, the Jets, they've got these 2 first-round picks this year. They have 3 first-round picks next year, so they can afford to trade a first-round pick. So they're going to trade a first-round pick plus more to move up from 16 to 6. They jump up 10 spots. The Browns move back to 16. And with that 6th overall pick, I have the Jets getting aggressive. They're going to add Carnell Tate from Ohio State. Listen, the Jets, when you look at their roster and their other biggest need, like pass rusher, yes, they fill that with Alvaro Ruiz, but they go double Ohio State here. They get Alvaro Ruiz and you get Carnell Tate. Listen, Geno Smith, him coming in as your quarterback, this is not the year where you're going to draft a quarterback. And I know they had dinner and kind of their interest in Ty Simpson, but I don't think they'll take him there. Listen, they need to find that. They haven't really had that true consistent wide receiver beside Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson, I think he was their leading receiver last year, even though he barely played last year, missing a lot of time due to injury. They need to get a true X beside him, get a true weapon. They got Adonai Mitchell, they got some other guys, but they need to add a true wide receiver. How about getting Carnell Tate? There's kind of the fear of why would you move up this high to get a wide receiver too? Listen, Carnell Tate, elite. He's got the best hands in this draft. He's a really good route runner. And again, you're not asking him to be that number 1 wide receiver. He certainly has the talent to be, but that's not what you're asking him to be. You just want him to be that, primary number 2, 1B target next to Garrett Wilson. And that's exactly what you need him to be. And he's going to flourish at that spot. And again, he wasn't asked to be that at Ohio State because you had Jeremiah Smith. So to get a guy, who has elite ball tracking skills, elite at the catch point, also has the size and the versatility. I know it's kind of the speed concerns. He ran a 4.52 at the 40. Puka Nacua ran a 4.57. He's outrunning people. I think he plays much faster than that speed. I think the Jets, they get aggressive. They use a lot of that traffic capital that they have, and they go get them a playmaker for Geno Smith and for the new quarterback next year in 2027, where you still have 2 first-round picks. You can afford to trade one of those. So now with that, you go get Carnell Tate from the Ohio State. At number 7, the Washington Commanders. Shout out Nico who influenced this pick for me. And again, I had Jeremiah Love at one point going number 4 to Tennessee, number 5 to the Giants. But I think this makes a lot of sense for the Washington Commanders. This is a need. I know they kind of addressed the running back position. They signed Rachaad White to a 1-year deal. They also brought back Jeremy McNichols. They signed Jerome Ford. They kind of just signed a lot of just veteran running backs to 1-year vet minimum contracts. So they're really just not for sure that one of those guys by committee is going to be the starting running back. I think if you're the Washington Commanders, you are trying to build around Jayden Daniels. You've done a good job kind of in terms of just trying to invest into the offensive line. Also look at, too, again, ideally just keeping your eyes out there. Like, again, I expect the 49ers to release for Brandon Ayuk to be a post-June 1 cut, and he will rejoin his teammate in Washington. That is widely what I expect. The move hasn't happened yet, but expect that move to come through the transaction wire down the stretch. So just keep your eyes on that. So with that, this opens the door where you can take best player available. And I also think this is the best spot for Jeremiah Love to pair with Jayden Daniels and just that duo of that run game, that run pass option. And the Washington Commanders, they'll have more opportunities to add to their, to their offense as well. They went all in on defense and free agency, signing Odafe Oweh, signing Caleb on Chason, Leo Chanel, Nick Cross, and just a lot of guys. They addressed their defense heavily in free agency. You now go offense and you had a dynamic playmaker, and I love Jeremiah Love. He's special. I think honestly he's the best player in this draft, me personally. I think he's that talented. He's that special. And they haven't really had a back kind of that caliber, like really since like Alfred Morris or like they also have Ja'Cory Grotzky-Merritt, a guy who they took last year who had a great year. But again, it's all about value. And I think for you to get him at 7, for him to really be a game changer for your offense, I think you take that if you're the Washington Commanders. At number 8, this pick might surprise some people for the New Orleans Saints. again, kind of how the board has fallen. Like, Jeremiah Love, again, doesn't make sense because you signed Travis Etienne to a 4-year, $52 million contract. David Bailey, if he was still on the board, I'd probably consider him here as well. Maybe you do take Mekhi Lemon because wide receiver is a big need, but another big need, and when looking at the Saints roster that I think a lot of people don't, see, is that the Saints, their cornerback room doesn't look great. Like, they have Kool-Aid McKinstry, but they have other guys like Cam Riley, I think his name is, and Isaac Yiadom, the corners there. That kind of doesn't, what I'm saying? They lost some key guys like DeMario Davis, their longtime veteran. He ended up going back to the Jets. When you look at the Saints and what they've done in their history, they've always surprised, a lot of people with their draft picks. They surprised me, certainly, by taking Kelvin Banks, number 9 overall last year, and that was a great pick. He was phenomenal last year for them. They took Talisu Fanga. They've invested in the offensive line. They signed David Edwards, so they've addressed their offensive line. They also traded up and got Chris Olave, in the first round, I think 11th overall a few seasons ago. And another surprising pick, too, was that they, in 2017, they moved, a shocking pick was that they ended up, drafting Marshawn Lattimore. And Marshawn Lattimore had injury concerns coming out of college, had some hamstring issues, but how crazy would it be 10 years later you drafted Marshawn Lattimore, who was a defensive rookie of the year and was one of the best corners when healthy in the league. And guess what you do with that? You go get Jermont McCoy, and that's what I have going here at number 8. Jermont McCoy goes number 8 overall. Listen, I know there's the injury concern. He didn't play last year due to the knee injury, but I think, again, he showed a lot of promise at that pro day, really showed that he was healthy. And number one thing I view, too, is that I think he, I know there's, Delane, as one, his floor. I think he has the higher floor, but I think the ceiling, I think Jermont McCoy projects better in his ceiling. I think this is a guy that could be a future superstar at corner, perennial all-pro. I think he's the next Derek Stingley 2.0, like with his size, his speed. And that's what I want in my corners. I want corners. And that can be shutdown corners. You may not throw to them, but I want corners. Throw to them, test them, and they pick the ball up. I'll take the risk of them getting burnt. I want corners who can turn the ball over for me. And Jermont McCoy was phenomenal that 2024 year. He was incredible. He was amazing. And I think if you're the Saints, that would kind of be a full circle moment where nearly 10 years ago, 2017, you take Marshawn Lattimore, who had some injury concerns, but guess what? He won Defensive Rookie of the Year. You're able to get Jermont McCoy. Similar again to how the Texans, again, like Derek Stingley had. He had an incredible freshman year, missed the last 2 years, basically missed a lot of more time after that due with injuries the next 2 years. But the 2024, the national championship, Derek Stingley, freshman safety, freshman corner, was so good that, guess what? He still went top 3 in the draft. He still was the first corner off the board opposite, Sauce Gardner. So I feel like you take that chance if you're the New Orleans Saints. I know this may be a shocking pick, but it makes a lot of sense for them to take McCoy. Number 9 overall, I just had a report come in / notification that the Chiefs, they potentially might move up to go get an offensive lineman. Well, Brett Veach, you ain't got to worry about that because you stay at 9, and guess what? You pick Francis Mauigoa, the tackle from Miami. I've had him go as high as 3 to the Arizona Cardinals, but if you look at like the Chiefs, and I know wide receiver makes a lot of sense for them too because they need to get that wide receiver one they haven't had since really Tyreek Hill left, but my biggest thing, like for the Kansas City Chiefs, is protecting Patrick Mahomes. Listen, when you look at the Super Bowls, Mahomes has won 3 Super Bowls, been to 5. When you look at the other 2, they've been destroyed. You want to know why? It's because their offensive line got annihilated in both of those. Versus the Tampa Bay Bucks and versus the Eagles a couple seasons ago. But the Chiefs want to get back to the Super Bowl, and also too, you got Patrick Mahomes coming off the injury. You got to protect him. And they've invested heavily in the offensive line with Trey Brown, with Creed Humphrey. They drafted Josh Simmons in a steal last year from Ohio State, but it's time for you to solidify that offensive line, and getting Francis Mauigoa, who I view as the next Penei Sewell. I think that's his ceiling there. And also, again, you really just haven't had that consistent offensive line play since Mitchell Schwartz retired. And I think that makes a ton of sense. Build through the trenches, protect Patrick Mahomes if you want to extend his career. He's coming off a serious injury. You got to protect him. And I think you're the Chiefs. You seeing now they're willing to be aggressive and move up. You ain't even got to worry about that. You take him at 9. Francis Mauigoa, number 9 to the Chiefs. At number 10, I have the New York Giants. So with that pick they got from the Dexter Lawrence trade, I have them taking Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver out of Arizona State. listen, I'm gonna just tell y'all right now, I think Jordan Tyson is the best wide receiver in this class. I think he has the ceiling, the potential to be a superstar and be one of the best receivers in the league. I think he is so good and so talented. He's 6'2", about 215. He's just a naturally given athlete. His feet, he's so fast and fundamentally sound with his route running, with his feet, with his hands. The biggest thing with him has been, again, the injuries, right? He's dealt with a lot of injuries throughout his career, has had, shoulder, knee, hamstring injuries that kind of kept him out through the offseason. That was really the biggest thing. But if you look at the New York Giants, again, you use that first round pick to get Caleb Downs, that, transcended safety there, that set the new standard to be the foundation of your defense. And then you go get Jordan Tyson. And again, it's all about adding weapons around Jackson Dart. He's an ideal scheme fit in Matt Nagy's scheme, getting those guys that can stretch the field. Malik Neighbors is coming back. You have Cam Spigatabu and Tyrone Tracy. You can still add to your running back room throughout the draft, but this fills a need. And I was talking to my boy Saya, like he was looking at it again, like other than Malik Neighbors, our wide receiver room is kind of, lackluster, because I know you signed Darnell Mooney, you have Calvin Austin, Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton, but you need to add more. And I told him this would be the best duo that the Giants have had in terms of wide receiver duos since, honestly, Akeem Hicks and Victor Cruz in the early 2000s. Ball knowledge right there. Maybe you can say Odell and Sterling Shepard, but that kind of really didn't last long because Odell started to deal with injuries, Sterling Shepard, and then he got traded. So, there's that there. So, but I think, again, man, the ceiling with Neighbors and Tyson as a duo together, I think just makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. What I'm also going to do, y'all, too, this video might be a little long, so I might just do half of the draft, maybe through pick 20, and then we'll do the rest of the draft as well to kind of just keep it minimal there. But as we continue at pick 11, and I have the Dolphins, the Miami Dolphins. They're picking at 11. I have them taking Spencer Fano, offensive lineman out of Utah. This is a guy that I compare, in terms of his versatility. I compare him to two specific guys. Elijah Vera Tucker, coming out of college, played tackle. He played guard, even played some center. There was that versatility that he's had, and he's kind of played all over the offensive line in the NFL. You know what I'm saying? He just got a big deal with the Jets, even though he's dealt with the injuries. You've also had, again, Graham Barton. This is a guy that, started out as a center, but they moved him to left tackle, so he has that 5-out positional versatility. And I think Spencer Fano for the Dolphins. Listen, if you're the Dolphins and you're in a new regime, Mansour Delane does make a lot of sense here for them too. Wouldn't be surprised. I had him for the longest going to the Miami Dolphins, but if you're the Miami Dolphins, I think with this first pick, you got to set a standard, and that's building through the trenches. When you look at teams like, the Detroit Lions, for example, they started out their regime with Brad Holmes in building through the trenches. They built the offensive line, drafting Penei Sewell, and who transformed their offensive line. You want to do that for the Miami Dolphins, and you want to show that by emphasizing and protecting Malik Willis, your quarterback, and getting a guy that can play all over the offensive line. I think it makes a ton of sense for them to take Spencer Fano, who can be so versatile and play all over your offensive line. At number 12, so remember, the Cardinals, they traded back at number 12, and they were able to get Rueben Bain Jr. Listen, I love Rueben Bain. If y'all been watching my TikTok, I love Rueben Bain. I think he's the best defensive player in this draft, quite honestly. I think he's the best edge rusher in this draft. I think he has the potential to be, a top 10, defensive player slash, defensive end in this league. He's a legit defensive end. You pair him with Josh Sweat. And again, the value to get him at 12. And this is a guy too, again, he's going to be dinged. I have him falling outside the top 10 because due to his arm length concerns. There's also been the off the field concern with the incident. Not going to go too much into detail in that, but again, that's kind of been cleared up. He hasn't, been charged or anything. So he, that situation, if you want to read more about it, just go on the internet and search it up. But Rueben Bain, I just think, again, everything aside, I think this is terrific value for, the Cardinals to move back and you still get a player of this caliber in Rueben Bain. I think that makes so much sense to get him at number 12. And you have that 20th overall pick to address a big addition and somebody that I feel like they like. At number 13, I think this would be a phenomenal pick for the Rams if they're able to get him here, and I think they will. I think that's Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver from USC. I think this to me is an ideal scheme fit for the for the Rams. If you look at what they've done, they're going all in. Like Matthew Stafford ain't coming back, but for one reason, that's try to win a Super Bowl. They came up short versus the Seattle Seahawks. Large part was due to their inability to stop the passer, and their corners were bad last year, as you've seen with their moves. They went all in. They brought in 2 former Chief corners and Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson to address that group. You know what I'm saying? They still have the 2 great edge rushers in Verse, Fisk. They also have Byron Young. And now this allows you to really focus on the offensive end. And remember, they traded that other first-round pick to get Trent McDuffie, but you still have the 13th pick, your own pick there, and you're able, or that other pick that they got from the Falcons, and you're able to add Makai Lemon. I feel like this would be a hell of a pick. You keep him in-house again, and he's an ideal scheme fit. Again, dominant through the slot. When you look at kind of the wide receivers throughout the Sean McVay era, it's really been, again, like Cooper Kupp. You've seen Robert Woods, just kind of those big slot receivers. Puka Nacua, obviously, right? And Devontae Adams is getting older. He's 34 years old, missed the last 3 games of the last year due to a hamstring injury. So there's the injury risk there. Puka Nacua, what I'm saying? There's also some stuff off the field going on with him, but I don't expect him to miss time. You also have the contract looming as well. Expect that to be taken care of. But to get Makai Lemon, who ideally, thrives in the slot, reminds me a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think he'd be a phenomenal pick at 13. With the 14th overall pick, I have the Baltimore Ravens selecting Vega Ione, guard out of Penn State. Listen, for the Baltimore Ravens, I know their philosophy has been to take the best player available, but they need to address their offensive line. You lost Tyler Lindenbaugh. I know they signed John Simpson. They have Emory Jones, but I feel like you want to establish and make sure Lamar Jackson is protected and improve an offensive line that did not play great last year. Guess what? Daniel Falele is gone. He's with the Giants. He's one of those other former Ravens that went and followed Harbaugh to the Giants. Now you can upgrade and improve your offensive line despite losing some starters. And I think Vega Ione, to get him at 14, is phenomenal. He's physical. He's nasty. He's a great pass protector. He's elite in the run blocking department. This would set a standard for the Baltimore Ravens in allowing that run game with Derrick Henry, who still hasn't shown any signs of slowing down, to improve there and continue for him to dominate. At number 15 overall, the slide ends for Mansour Delane. I think for the Buccaneers, this is terrific value to get him at 15. Listen, the Buccaneers, they couldn't stop a cold last year. Their secondary was not great last year. Now, they kind of maybe want to address their edge rusher here, but I don't think given the value. I think, again, if Delane is on the board here for the Buccaneers, I know they took Benjamin Morrison. They have Robert Parrish. They have some other guys. You want to try to, improve your defense. And I think adding a shutdown corner in Delane, who I think is really great. He had a great year for LSU last year. I think it makes a ton of sense. At number 16 overall, the Browns, remember, they traded down with that pick from the Jets. They ended up taking Caden Proctor, tackle out of Alabama. I've heard the rumors they really like Caden Proctor. I think, in my opinion, I would take, my dog Monroe Freely here at this tackle spot. But I think, again, they like Caden Proctor. You need to get that legit left tackle, and I think you don't wait any longer. You go ahead and nab him here while he's still on the board, and you try to address your wide receiver later. And I think Proctor just makes a ton of sense. And obviously, there's the concerns about, his weight, his consistency, and kind of this, the recent kind of drafting Alabama tackles in the first round just kind of haven't quite worked out. The worst, like I said, the worst he can be is Evan Neal, but the best he can be is kind of like Penei Sewell, or like Jonathan Ogden, the Legends, and stuff like that, as well as some other offensive linemen that I can't think about that'll be much more better, comparisons. But Proctor, if he, improves and make sure his weight is consistent, improves as a player with his physique and his talent, could go a long way. And you're trying to protect whether that's Deshaun Watson or Shedeur Sanders. And then at 17, this would be a steal for the Lions. You get Monroe Freeland, my dog from Georgia. I think this makes a ton of sense for them. Just having that left tackle, they lost Taylor Decker. They moved on from him. You have Penei Sewell. He can definitely, play his natural spot in college, play left tackle, but you keep him on the left side. You trust the development. Monroe Freeland, if you look at the Lions too, they took Tate Ratledge. They've added Georgia in the offensive line last year. So now you stay on that emphasis of building through your trenches, being tough. I think he fits what the Lions want to do. He's athletic. He's tall. He's physical. He really improved from 2024 to 2025 just watching him. And I think he'd be a great fit and a great pick for the Lions. At number 18, I think this would be a great pick. Brian Flores, I think, would love this pick. Dylan Thieneman, the safety out of Oregon, playmaker. This is a dude that was amazing at Purdue, transfers to Oregon, had a great year for Oregon last year. He's a playmaker. He tested much better than what I expected him to test, and that's what, to me, solidified him as a first-round pick. And to get him, I think he'd be a phenomenal playmaker and a great scheme fit for Brian Flores. Again, losing a guy like Cam Bynum, you know what I'm saying, a few, in free agency to the Colts, they need to kind of add that playmaker. Harrison, Harry the Hitman, they moved on from him. He's likely done playing, after a great year last year, and, what a career he had. And that's an ideal, comparison / replacement / successor. You get Dylan Thieneman to slot in as that, versatile playmaker in your defense who could do a lot of things, come up in the line of scrimmage, to be that deep safety, make plays on the ball. I think it makes a ton of sense. We're going to do the next two picks, and then we're going to end the video here because it's already at that 30 mark. At 19 overall, I had the Panthers, and I think this would be just great value for them. Kenyon Sadiq, tight end out of Texas A&M. I think if they're able to get him here, I think this would be a steal / great value for them. This guy, I had at one point going to Baltimore at 14. They're able to get him at 19. I think this is great value for Sadiq. I think, again, the athletic profile may project him a lot higher, and teams may have him higher. But I think, again, in terms of just, again, this is a guy too, limited production in college, but he had a great year on top of the production. His ceiling is a guy that could be a hybrid tight end. And if he continues to develop, he can be, with his athletic profile, you can see him really be one of the best tight ends of football with his ceiling. And I think, again, when you look at the Carolina Panthers, it's all about continuing to add and build around Bryce Young. You draft, the offensive rookie of the year last year in Tetairoa McMillan. You got Jalen Coker. You still have Xavier Legette. But you're able to get a guy like Kenyon Sadiq and work the middle of the field and also be a vertical threat. I think, it makes a ton of sense for the Carolina Panthers there, and he'd be a great pick, for them at 19 and great value. And then at 20, you remember the Arizona Cardinals, they got this pick from the Dallas Cowboys when the Cowboys moved up to get Sonny Styles, and this is where we'll end the video here, but I'll also record a part 2. And with this pick, the Cardinals, they get their franchise quarterback, their future franchise quarterback. Ty Simpson falls to them at 20. I think this is much better value compared to having him go in the top 10. You get him at 20. I think this is a great pick for them. I mean, for them, I think the worst case secret is that they love Ty Simpson. If they have an opportunity to kind of pull where the Giants did, where they moved back into the first round to get him. But the fact that you're able to use this as the scenario where you get that other pick from the Dallas Cowboys, and now you don't have to worry about that. Maybe you can still move down, get more picks, and get him maybe at, say, 23, 25. But you also don't kind of want to run the risk. Maybe the Steelers, they still pass on him at 21. But I think to get him and jump ahead of the Steelers, and I don't think the Steelers are going to move up for him. Ty Simpson, and look, I know there's the concerns about the starting experience, only started 15 games in college, but for him to be not that experienced, but just be so fundamentally ahead in the game, just with his footwork, his processing, his accuracy, he was really good, to be honest, before injuries, inconsistencies, drops, the team. Alabama's run game, too, was terrible. They didn't have a great run game, so it kind of was like watching the Dallas Cowboys 2023 all over again, where they didn't have a consistent run game, so you knew they were going to run the ball. So guess what? It made it easier to game plan against Alabama. And then when you got Ryan Williams, sorry to drop a name, but dropping the ball all the damn time, like, that hurts the quarterback. But it's not going to show. It's going to be more so in the quarterback and show on his numbers compared to wide receiver. Yeah, it'll show he dropped the ball, but, like, y'all get the point there, man. Ty Simpson, to me, is much better than, like, what the inexperience and stuff shows. I think he's going to be a really good NFL quarterback. I think he's a great scheme fit for Mike LaFleur, former Rams offensive coordinator. I think this makes a ton of sense. I hope y'all enjoyed this part 1 of the video. We're going to finish out the rest of the mock draft, so that'll drop soon. Hope y'all have enjoyed so far. Have a blessed one.